Muchas gracias, Eda. First, very, very good to be with you all. I need to inform you, I really still do not yet speak Spanish. I understand much, but for many years I have been promising myself that before I leave as president, I will be able to speak and fully understand. I don't know, I blame it on gray hair that I'm moving slowly. It's, again, very good to be having this meeting once again. I have attended meetings such as this with you on a number of occasions over the years. And the activity that is present, we say in the Americas, but really we're talking about Latin America with this meeting, is always so impressive to me, the activity and the energy. I'm very happy also that Esteban was able to announce the School of the Wisdom session that we will be doing specifically for Spanish language. Although this pandemic of the last year and a half has been devastating and tragic in many ways, as with everything, there is nothing that is all good or all bad. One of the wonderful things that has come out of this pandemic has been the way that around the world, within the Theosophical world, more people have had access to the teachings, to the lectures, to the talks than have ever been possible before, because we adapted and we have accepted the use of the internet. So today, I just wanted to say a few things about the topic for this conference, as I understand it, compassion and the TS objects and mission. And I'd like to just share some ideas and also a little bit of a story about something that I found to be quite meaningful. So with the objects of the Theosophical Society, we are all familiar with the three objects. They're expressed in every language around the world. And for most of us, we have come to accept them as foundational, something that is unchanging and constant, the three objects. But it's very good for us to remind ourselves that these objects have in fact evolved since the founding of the Theosophical Society. In 1875, when the Theosophical Society was founded, there was in fact one object. That object was stated as in this way: the object of the Theosophical Society are to collect and diffuse a knowledge of the laws which govern the universe. One object. So over the next 21 years, that one object took different forms until we got to our three. The one object next became 6. After 6, it became 7. The 7 became 4, and the 4 became 3. So in 1896, 5 years after HPB's passing, the most recent revisions were made to come to the three objects that we are familiar with. And I tend to refer to these objects as our current objects. I do not ever say our final objects. The fact is that anything that is about language exists in the world of form, and form is limiting and form is temporary. It always changes. You find in the classic scriptures of the world, the ones we're familiar with, the Bhagavad Gita, the Bible, the Mahabharata, probably none of those were written in the language that we are familiar with. And periodically, the language of those scriptures is updated into a form that is more easily understood according to that time. So this is something that we can recognize and can expect. But I invite people sometimes, just as an exercise of your own free thought, to attempt this experiment. The objects as we know them are to form a nucleus of the universal brotherhood of humanity, to encourage the study of science, philosophy, and religion, and to investigate the unexplained laws of nature and the powers latent in man. But I would invite you or anyone who is a member of the Theosophical Society to take some time and think for yourself what those objects are speaking about, and attempt to put it into a language that speaks directly to you. Many people, they will find that just the way that it is written is the way that they understand most immediately. For others, perhaps some personal sort of changes in the language would be much more helpful to their understanding. I know for myself in the scripture, the Bible, which is something that for the Western world we tend to be more familiar with, there's one particular passage that is powerful, but which for my own understanding, I changed. There is a psalm, one of the Psalms of David, Psalm number 24, that makes a very powerful and meaningful statement. In English, the way that it is expressed is, the earth is the Lord's. It is the possession of the Lord. The earth is the Lord's, and all who live within it, and everything therein. In English, my change was relatively insignificant because I simply removed one letter. In Spanish, it will be slightly different, but the change that I made is I made it from the earth is the Lord's to the earth is the Lord. And for me, it was significant in that there is at that point no separation between the divine and all of those that exist within this greater life that we think of as divinity. It's a small change, but again, for me, it expressed what I think was trying to be said much more clearly and was a subject for a deeper sort of meditation. So I encourage you to attempt this exercise for yourself, always keeping in mind that there have been great people, great teachers who have come before us, who have passed on profound wisdom. But the wisdom as we have received it, Jesus wrote nothing. Buddha wrote nothing. None of these great, Krishna wrote nothing. It was transcribed by human beings and passed on to us. So enough about that. You get my point. Let's talk a little bit about the mission of the Theosophical Society. While we have objects for the Theosophical Society, for 143 years, there was no statement of the Theosophical Society's mission. We have the objects which seem to imply a certain sort of mission, and we have basically tried to think our way into it over all of those years. Because mission implies action. The objects imply more of a vision. So with the objects, we have the action words of to form, to encourage, to investigate. So those are what we have. But for a mission statement, it was not until 3 years ago that a formal mission statement for the Theosophical Society was developed. And that's a little bit of the story, really, that I would like to share with you, because for me, it was something that was deeply inspiring, how that came to be. Also, it might be something that could be useful, because a good deal of my theosophical life, completely unintended, has been involved with dealing with groups of people, boards of directors, secretaries, treasurers, in that world. And for many of you, you find yourselves in similar situations, whether it's the working within a lodge, whether it's within a study group, whether it's a national section or internationally. We all find ourselves working with groups, committees, things like this. And it's one of the things that we recognize that continually, one of the ways that this brotherhood that is spoken of is formed, it doesn't form in isolation. It comes through contact and the attempt at cooperation. And the same thing is true for the Inter-American Federation, the organization that we are having the conference with today. And unless the Inter-American Federation is the only exception in the world, you will find that one of the things we have to learn to deal with is human personality. H.P. Blavatsky, who had the unfortunate experience of being quite knowledgeable about such things, made a statement at one time. She made the comment that personality is the curse within the Theosophical Society, as it is everywhere. I had not read that, but for years, I have said something similar but different. What I tend to say is that, in my view, the Theosophical Society is perfect in every way. The only problem, the one problem, is the people. So you, me, the personalities that we carry do more to interfere with the work that we treasure than anything else. So what do we do about that when we must work together in order to develop anything within this theosophical work? So I'd just like to share with you this, it's really a story of how this mission statement came into being in 2018. Because it was through the vote of the General Council, which is similar to a board of directors, but the General Council of the Theosophical Society, that confirmed that this would be the statement. So this group of people developed it, more than 30 people. And there's an expression about the work of committees that I will also share with you. The expression is this, that a camel is a horse designed by a committee. So there's this problem. So when we started with this work on what became the mission statement, it didn't even begin. It began in 2017 in the General Council. And it did not start as an intention to have a mission statement for the Theosophical Society. It started because it was felt there was some statement necessary for lodges. In one particular section of the Theosophical Society, they were having difficulties because lodges felt that you could study anything and it was still theosophy. So depending on the lodge, they were fascinated with psychic phenomenon or with the teachings of Alice Bailey. Some were even taking time for discussions of politics. So there's this expression, and I think it traces to Blavatsky, I do believe, that theosophy is everything, but everything is not theosophy. So anyway, in an attempt to try and put some sort of boundaries on what should be studied as theosophy in lodges, there was a very long document that was presented to the General Council of the Theosophical Society. And as people put thought into it, it became clear that you had to add more and more language in order to cover all of the various possibilities for error. And this is a very familiar pattern that occurs in Buddhism after the death and parinirvana of Buddha. Then a similar situation arose. And they had what they called the Tripitaka, or the three baskets, the three divisions of the teachings of the Buddha. The first basket, the first grouping, was the sutras, or the sermons of the Buddha. The second was the rules for the monastic community. And the third one was the Abhidharma, or the metaphysics related to Buddhism. And of those three divisions, the one that was by far the largest was the rules related to what should and should not be done within the monastic community. Because again, they started with no rules whatsoever and then found that the personality would have its way and you'd have to make a rule. And then as human beings, the monks themselves would find loopholes and they would be able to do the thing without technically breaking the rule, and you would need another rule. Anyone who takes the time to try to read it's called the Vinaya, Vinaya. You take the time to try and read it, you will be amazed at the cleverness of the human mind in circumventing rules. And so for us, this was a path that we determined we did not want to go down. And that rather than develop a statement of what should not be, we felt that it would be more powerful to develop a statement of direction for the Theosophical Society. If it fits within that, then we didn't need to have all of the thou shalt not statements. So this is where really this particular story begins. And I really want to share it with you because, quite honestly, I've been president now for 7 years. And during that time, this for me is one of the signature moments of working within this theosophical work. So we began with a long document and we determined that we would take it up at a different time. We had a group of people to work to try and condense this to something approximating the ideas that we would go into. And we determined we would take it up together at our next meeting, which would occur in the Netherlands, in Naarden, at the International Theosophical Center. A couple of years before, we had made the decision that the way our General Council for the International Society functioned needed to be enhanced. Once a year, for 4 or 5 hours, for many, many decades, the international work of the Theosophical Society took place at one meeting the day before Christmas in Adyar for 4 or 5 hours. So we determined that something more was necessary, and we decided that we would initiate an idea of strategically planning for the Theosophical Society's work, and we allotted 5 days specifically for that, not for treasury, not for organizational issues, for thinking into the future for the Theosophical Society's work internationally. So we determined we would meet in Naarden in June of that year, and 30 members of the General Council, along with other members who had been invited for this meeting, came to participate. And Isis was there, Angels was there, I know Esteban was there, and maybe, I know that those are the faces that I see. Yeah. And we took this up. We had other business that we had to deal with, but for intense periods, we would take it up, this mission statement, refining the language. We would stop, and then always my advice to the group was, tonight, when you sleep, think on these things, and we'll take it up again tomorrow. And then the next day, we would take care of other business, and then we would also focus on this. And there was this refining process that was taking place. There was this collective focus on this one issue that started to take form and started to become very, very harmonious. And the idea from the very beginning was that this statement needed to be as compact as possible, not one word more than what was required to express the point. So a great deal of what was going on was pruning in the beginning. And there were, among the group, there were people who really had even a personal attachment to some particular word. But as we learned, as we continued working together, this whole aspect of personality faded away. And, excuse me, I remember very clearly when on the last day, the final form of this mission statement came into place. Because it wasn't something that was just my understanding. There was the sense throughout, I mean, imagine this now, 30 people from every country in the world. You know, we had people from Asia, Philippines, Argentina, Brazil, we had all over the world, all over Europe, the United States. And at that moment, there was such a sense of stillness, of presence. It was remarkable, and everyone felt it. It was like the experience probably many of us have had, where you step into an ancient forest and suddenly you might have been very chatty, very conversational, but in the presence, we all fell silent. One of the things that we do talk about in our theosophical study and our spiritual life is about the masters and the presence and direction of the masters. In our history, we are familiar with the letters that were received by many individuals in the early life of the Theosophical Society, those letters which have long since stopped. And so for many people, the idea of the presence and the influence of the masters is a historical idea. Somehow they feel it doesn't relate to this moment or to their experience. But probably it's not necessary to say that this effort that brought this mission statement into being was the work of the masters, but it was clearly something where there was some higher, deeper life that we were able to enter into in this process. And I think the need to put a name on it is irrelevant. But I can tell you, at that moment, I can remember very clearly the quality of the light in the room, the way in which we all became still and acknowledged it's here. It has come into the world. And again, I'll share with you that statement. But the main thing that I took from it is this, that within this theosophical work, there is the possibility to connect more deeply. But the possibility only arrives to us not as individuals, but as we are able to quiet the pressure of our personalities together. So that's the story. And out of that came a mission statement, 24 words in length. I tell the people that I work with, very often you have difficulty if someone asks you, what is the Theosophical Society? We find ourselves sometimes stumbling. I tell the people that I know, if your memory has the capacity for 24 words, learn this. I'm not going to analyze it for you. I will just say it. The mission of the Theosophical Society, the first words are to serve humanity by cultivating an ever deepening understanding and realization of the ageless wisdom, spiritual self-transformation, and the unity of all life. We talk about compassion during this conference. The mission of the Theosophical Society related to compassion is stated in the first 3 words, to serve humanity. So then the question is how? By cultivating understanding which leads to realization. And again, cultivating is a very specific word. Any of you who have a garden have some familiarity with the deeper meanings of that word. It is a process that requires both knowledge and the development of skill and the capacity to release control of results. Probably that's the hardest part of it all. So this cultivation is intended to move toward a deepening understanding and realization. And we frequently make the mistake in our thinking of confusing knowledge and understanding, or knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. But knowledge does not equal understanding. Understanding is an indication of the activity of intuition, buddhi, the capacity to see and realize the relationships among things. So then it gets to be fairly straightforward. To serve humanity by cultivating an ever deepening understanding and realization of what? 3 things. The ageless wisdom, spiritual self-transformation. Spiritual self-transformation admits the possibility that we can influence the direction of our consciousness. And the last thing is the unity of all life. In a way, when we speak about the unity of all life, the mission statement ends where the objects begin, with the nucleus of the universal brotherhood. That's the mission statement. Some few comments about the objects. But I think for the IATF and for us as individuals, I think the story has more value than the words. Nada más.
Compassion and compassion and compassion
Compassion to serve humanity
and
is the
compassion.
compassionate act.
Compasión, servir a la humanidad.
The entire mission statement, as well as the entire work of the Theosophical Society, is focused on compassion. It requires a sense of unity and awareness that there is a oneness that's inseparable. Ahora, nada más.
Bueno, ahora se terminó. Well, thank you very much, Tim, for
Muchas gracias.
the words, for your participation on our Congress. We are finishing a period and starting a new one, and it's always good to have you with us.
I'll be with you as long as there is an IATF and as long as I can be of any help in any way. Here I am.